how often are you thinking about what an individual person's experience with your work will be like, or even noticing societal changes amongst, I mean, let's be honest, young men, because that's
Mhm.
basically our audience. Like, how much are you actively thinking about that?
I think it's even a little bit more micro than that for me. It's not so much just looking at what an individual is, I guess, feeling when they see my video come across their feed or they see your video on their homepage, whatever it may be. It's about a specific subset of people that I want to try and target. It's honestly, I think we're even at the point with social media where if you're putting stuff out there, even for a really small niche group of people, they'll find you if you're sticking to that niche group of people, if that makes sense, right? So I think the big thing that I've certainly made mistakes in the past is trying to appeal to everyone and trying to cast a really wide net. And that goes to even just being on every platform. I actually have changed my mindset a little bit on that, where I used to try and just be everywhere. Now I'm trying to be in like really niche pockets of where the people that I'm targeting for my business are hanging out, and I'm trying to really just do that game better than I did before. So in terms of like where people are at, I think you have to ask yourself what type of people you want to appeal to and what type of business you have to have. Basically, I think the biggest mistake people make, they start in the wrong spot. You're starting in a spot where it's like, I need to make YouTube videos or I need to live stream. What you should be doing is trying to figure out what type of people are you trying to like actually attract and what do those people actually want. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
who is the number one, like if you were to just like have someone sitting in a chair in front of you that was your ideal audience member, like you have to be able to describe them in massive detail before you even start, in my opinion. So that would be my challenge to you, Davis. If that is something that in your head you immediately can't come up with, that's step one.
Oh, it's really easy. It's just me.
Perfect.
That has been my guiding philosophy in doing podcasts and doing, like, when I started this podcast like 9 years ago, I was like, I just want to do the Bill Simmons show, but for dudes in their 20s. And then I
Hmm.
turned into being 30. So now dudes in their early 30s, their very early 30s, is more like what this is. And then, like, for the YouTube stuff, for me, it's like, oh, it's just a sicko who can't do anything but think about fantasy sports all the time and just wants to
Hmm.
be on, specifically underdog, all the time. And like, I've done branched out and done the other high stakes drafts and stuff there too. But yeah, like, my consumers, like, what do I like? Like, if I wasn't, because, like, I worked a job where I had free time and I could look around on YouTube and be on Twitch all the time. And
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, I just want more. Like, I remember having a feeling last draft season, listening to Ben Gretch and Sean's show Stealing Bananas, and I'm like, I could actually just listen to this for 8 hours a day. Like, if they
Yeah.
just were infinite content monkeys and they could just do this show all the time and it's just all they were doing and they made enough money to sustain their lives up doing that, I would just listen the whole time. And that was kind of like a switch for me of why, oh, people love a 4-hour YouTube stream, a
Hmm.
6-hour YouTube. Like, they just want, they
Some
just,
people, some
some
people don't.
people, not all people. I want it though.
The people that
I,
you're targeting. Yeah.
yeah,
And what you want.
exactly.
That's a great position to be in for you is like you know exactly the type of stuff that you would want to consume. So in that way, like I've talked about it before, like what does good look like? You have a really good handle on what you think is interesting, what content you think is good, what conversations you think are actually engaging. So that's a really good place to be too, because if you were to like run into one of your followers on the street, you probably would like get along with them, have a lot to talk about, and enjoy that interaction. That's something I've battled with a little bit too, because I have a little bit different goals. I would say I'm not creating content for me. I'm creating content for like me 5, 6 years ago personally. So the difference is like if I'm um, walking into Viking Stadium, this has happened before. I go to every game. The people that are stopping me are the people that are like, "Hey, like, do you make sports betting TikToks?" And it's like a 25-year-old kid, right? So
Yeah.
like my wife gives me crap all the time too because I get stopped like more often than you would think with like some sort of version of that question, and it's usually a little bit of a younger audience. So to me, it's like, what would I have really enjoyed 5 or 6 years ago? Or even someone like me, maybe just getting some disposable income for the first time. They still have a normal job, whatever that may be, but they're really interested in sports and they want to sound smart in their group chat with their buddies. So that's a little bit of a different thing too. And like in terms of like the social media metric that I'm the most interested in figuring out, like, isn't likes, it's definitely not comments, not followers, it's dollars for me, right? Like, I want content to build, I guess I want to use content to build businesses, earn money, and like unlock time freedom in my life. So I want to have like a real path to where I'm putting time in and I can get dollars out and I can kind of reinvest in my business as I go and really just grow that funnel. So I'm not necessarily trying to build content for someone me today. I'm trying to build content for someone like me 5 or 6 years ago, because I still come from a place where you want to at least be able to tell engaging stories, but you also want to have some sort of authority and help people. Like, it does come from like I'm like a little bit of someone, I just like to help people in general, whether it's help them in their business or just help entertain them, help them not make the same mistakes I did. And in some ways too, I can help in that way of like, hey, lost money doing this in DFS 5 years ago because I literally couldn't get this thing right or whatever it may be. So
Right.
I think there's different approaches for it, but that's how I look at it.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not in the turning time value to money part yet. I'm in like the scrape and claw for an audience any way that's possible. Cause like I think, and I've talked about this a lot with Peter, like growing live streaming on YouTube is like pretty slow. It's pretty difficult to get to. But like Pete has gotten to a spot in his audience, and like, you know, like Ron has gotten there and these other guys have gotten there where like they can go a week, 10 days, 2 weeks without doing a video, and like their life, it's not all gonna collapse, and I'm not there yet. And part of that is like, I mean, literally just got thrown into it kind of late in the process. Like when I got let go in June of 2024, it's like, well, do I get a full-time job? Do I, you know, beg those guys at ETR to pay me enough to live to like write waiver wire articles? Do I like 4for4 was offering stuff and like do like a bunch of contracting work? And I did some of that, but like that is at the end of the day, like it's rat race stuff, which is like not to say that there's no glory or valor in that. Like every it's just a function of society. There's always going to be a need for that stuff. But like I've been gifted a spot in life where like I got in fantasy football really early. I've got name recognition. Like I got to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, my very first stream. So
Mhm.
like it would be stupid to just be like, all right, well, it would be impossible for me to build something on my own. And it's been harder than I thought. Obviously, like it's not harder, slower. You know,
Mhm.
you like because I think you've probably had this experience, or maybe not. I don't know. You're a very successful guy, where like you expect things to either not work or work. So you get the answer right away. You get the instant gratification of, oh, this is going to work for me. This is a path I can pursue, or this is a path that is not going to work, and I got to do something else. And I'm like kind of like right in the middle of that.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting. And I appreciate you saying that. But also, one of the things I want to be as transparent as possible about too is I make mistakes all the time. And my mistakes are bigger mistakes now, right? Like, I made a mistake in December that's going to cost me like 18 to 20 grand, right? Just because of misallocating resources into trying to build up some aspect of my team that would save me time down the road. Like, so those are like big mistakes. So everything definitely isn't just perfect, and it is constant iteration. I bring up Cody a lot, the girl that I work for 2 years, because she's such a big creator just in general in the business world. And the business content creation world is about 100x more
I was
competitive
gonna
than the
say
stuff that we're trying to do. So
300x. Yeah.
it's insane, just the money in general that people are willing to spend on their teams, on ads, all of those things, right? So one of the things that I still really take from her to this day is her speed to execution, her speed to try things, but also her speed to cut things that are not working and are not bringing ROI. So I think about that a good amount. I have definitely been through it. Like, I've been through the layoff situation that you went through as well, was debating getting a full-time job outside of sports, like all of that, right? Like, I started my YouTube channel in February of 2018. So I did have a little bit of a head start there, but it's definitely not saturated if you're doing the right things, right? So I guess my reality check in some ways to you, and where I want to challenge you because you're my friend, is I don't think effort alone is going to be enough, right? So hard work on the
Definitely
wrong
not.
things
Yeah.
is not the right approach. So no amount of streaming, posting, grinding is going to fix a bad strategy, right? So the best creators that I've seen, and not just in sports and across everything, they're the ones that aren't necessarily working harder. They're just working smarter on the right things. So if they're not seeing meaningful growth or revenue, whatever it is, it just probably means you're rowing in the wrong direction. Not necessarily that you just need to do more of the same, basically. So that would be like my challenge. So like what I look at, it's almost like the attention versus ROI conversation that we're kind of having, right? So if you're focused on getting some views, the right type of views, but not turning them into something for your business, that's fine. You're going to be building your audience, all of those things. But instead of just focusing on like more hours, I think you should focus a little bit more on building up different skill sets, an actual system, top down funneling, like basically your top of funnel into what your ultimate goal is your live streaming communities and that sort of thing, right? So it's really just like the top 1% of creators are winning because they can basically find that content market fit of what they really want to do, what drives their business, but also because then they can focus on that one thing pretty relentlessly and they have their top down approach basically dialed in on where are their new people finding them, and then where are they basically nurturing those people, and then where are they ultimately turning them into some sort of customer in what fashion that may be, right? Because there's probably tons of people, Davis, that have been listening to you for years that just want different ways to support you and give you more money, but there's no way for them to do that. You know what I mean? So,
Well, it's not even so much that. Well, I'm sure there are some people that feel that way, but it's also uh, it's a very, especially on YouTube, it's a tough balance to strike between like, oh, dude, we're all just hanging out, we're all having a good
mhm,
time, versus like, hey, man, I really need you to do X, Y, or Z so that I can keep doing this. And like, I work the stuff in, I do my bits. Like, I have
mhm,
YouTube memberships, I have a Patreon, I have all that
mhm,
stuff, and like, there's a product, but like the something that I could certainly learn from you and from other people is like marketing. Like, there are just tricks and strategies to marketing that is a part of my game that's not built at all. The marketing is all, I guess ad hoc is not really the right word, but it's just it's very like, if it works, it works. But one of the things we talked about when you and I chatted in the summer when I was trying to figure out what I was doing was like, you really should be working on a newsletter.
mhm.
And that's like the last thing I've done. I think I've done, like, I published like one post on my newsletter since I started all this because of just time. Like,
Yep,
it's a I and I've really had to learn time management stuff kind of on the fly because I just didn't really have to be that efficient with my time at my
yeah.
old job. There was a lot of time to kind of just be in between tasks. But that I think is probably like one of the things that I would really like to turn on for like the next like 6 months, is to just be, because it's one of the things you talked about on Lowell. It's like an email list is more valuable than a Twitter follow or a YouTube subscriber, because those people are directly engaged. They have to consciously opt in,
Mhm.
and there are funnel opportunities there.
I think so. And it's also, to me, it's an opportunity to provide even more value for free too. Cause I do a ton of stuff for free, right? For the most part, like most of what I'm doing, I'm just trying to give as much value as I can, but give them really what they're looking for. There's someone that's actually going to open my newsletter every day. They want a lot more detail on why X play is good or bad, or I think X player is good or bad than someone that's watching a 60-second short form video, right? So I want to like really just reward those people that are on the newsletter, just because if I want to put something in front of them to promote one of my products or someone else's products, it's a little bit more accepted at that point because I've given so much value away for free that they're more than willing to kind of check something out and support, not support. But it's just a better way to do that than just you can't be asking. I definitely don't think you should be just asking things of your audience constantly either, right? It's got to be like the even the old Gary V's like jab jab right hook type of thing. It's still to this day one of those things that you should be prioritizing and thinking about. But the newsletter stuff's easier for someone like me because like I can do like my long form, higher level research stuff, put that in the newsletter and build a script from there, build short form stuff from there, and really just try and build narratives and stories around things that's just more engaging and interesting. It's harder if you're starting from like a long form podcast conversation type of thing because it's really just a completely different piece of content versus like a
Right.
repurposing something. You know what I mean?
All right. I actually want to talk to you a little bit about thumbnails and the
Mhm,
science of thumbnails. Because actually, again, one of the things you just said to me really offhand, like 2 weeks ago about
mhm,
like resolutioning on thumbnails. I mean, I had literally never even didn't even I like it's like you look at a good thumbnail, a professionally done thumbnail, like a really big YouTube channel, and you're like, there's something about that that sticks out. And I
mhm,
couldn't even really put my finger on it. Like, oh, what is so good about that thumbnail? And then immediately after that, I just like did a little bit of clicking around and researching. I was like, oh, actually, in the tool I already use to make thumbnails, there's the ability to scale up all the images, like the images inside the images, the backgrounds. You can scale up the whole page. You
mhm,
can make it in 4K or whatever. Uh, let's back up a little bit. Thumbnails, man.
mhm.
What would tell me your background with thumbnails? Do you pay a guy? Do you know how to make them? Did you gain that skill set? Like what just your philosophy on thumbnails?
Yeah, I would say even like a step back from that too. Every aspect of my business at some point I've done myself, and I've at least fallen down a rabbit hole at some point or another to try and learn the skill, and at least be like a B, maybe a C at the skill before I try and hire someone that I think is A plus and more of a specialist, right? So that was like even my framework before I started to go work for Cody, where she does hire specialists for everything. But I got to sit in on like these type of meetings where like the only person X person does is think about thumbnails all day long, right? And the way that the things you can learn from that are actually more simple than you think. Probably the first thing that you should do is just go to your homepage of your YouTube and see the types of thumbnails that you are more likely to click on in general, and what you think might be high quality, low quality. Because what it comes down to, and this is just like something in general in content and sports content that people could probably do better at. It's like, how do we actually steal like an artist? Like find a real framework of why does this video pop out to me and why does this look super high quality that someone else is doing? And that doesn't have to be someone else in sports. It could be like, why do I like this thumbnail versus another one? And how do I reverse engineer that for my own thing? Right. So for you, long form conversations, you should be looking at what types of podcast thumbnails really pop out to you. And it's not going to be like these like crazy faces of like the surprise YouTube. Like that stuff's like such old meta anyway. More often than not, it's going to be a face of someone that you either recognize or don't recognize, but it's going to be like a really high quality, high res image. And then it's going to be some sort of text on the left or right. And the text is not their name. The text is something to catch their attention. And then really the thumbnail and title need to work together in tandem. It's not the same thing. No one cares about your episode name. No one cares about your podcast name. It's really how can I balance this image, this like 56 characters or whatever you do to really get someone into the content, and how do I deliver on that promise basically, because that's basically what it is. If someone's clicking on your thumbnail and your title, you're giving them a promise, and how can I deliver on that promise as quickly as possible on the intro of those videos, right? So one of the things that I would do if I was you is find some really popular podcasts, see how they're doing their YouTube, and a lot of them are kind of doing the same exact things. They're either starting with some sort of like highlight reel sizzle type of thing, which is honestly like kind of becoming old meta quickly anyway. Some sort of intro, what this conversation is about, and then kind of basically going right into the conversation from there, or completely the opposite of that and just getting right into it, right? So there's no small talk, there's nothing. It's like the first words that come out of that, like their mouth, are like something super engaging about the title and thumbnail. So I would even structure that in your conversation is like, what is the first question or the first conversation I want to have with the person that I'm about to talk to? And that's where like you should hit play, or that's where your edit should start. There's like three different ways to do it, but delivering on that promise of the click is a lot more important than people realize, because just like the drop off, like I could open up your YouTube analytics right now and I would imagine that your click through rates are somewhere around 5 to 7%, and your drop off in the first 10 seconds is probably massive.
Yeah, it's I know I actually don't know for this channel cuz I haven't looked in a while, but I know that my
Your
click-through
biggest
rate
one is what you
is
should look at anyway. Your smallest account isn't really that useful to look at those metrics because it's a really small subset of audiences that's seeing it
exactly.
anyway. So yeah.
So I know for the live stream, well, it's not just live streaming, and I have more questions about that later. But
Mhm,
like, so for the videos, the click through rate is normally between 6 to 8%. It's a
mhm,
really bad video if it's 5%.
mhm.
Normally, actually, I don't have very many 5%. Normally, it's like something people just really don't care about. So it's like 3% or 4%. Like they just don't
Timeline
get.
matters too. like first
Yeah.
24-hour click-through rate is honestly more important than looking at a live stream that was a month ago. Because you'll lose
Um,
people that like, I guess some of your stuff's pretty evergreen versus others. But like if I had a live stream and looked at click-through rate on like one of my live streams right now, it would be insanely low because it's just not relevant anymore. People clicked away that got into it or something. So
but I mean, it's like 50% on
mhm.
anything is just like immediate
Yeah.
done or whatever.
Mhm.
And I think that actually goes two ways because like obviously I'm pretty deep in the meta of like tagging and like I know like what I'm pretty good at the keywords and description. So I actually think my stuff gets served to a lot of people who are more normie fantasy football people and they'll
I wish
see
that stuff mattered, man. I don't mean to throw cold water on you, but
no,
the
no, I'm
tagging
saying it's
stuff, like,
bad. I'm saying
it
it's
just doesn't
bad.
matter. No, that stuff doesn't
Oh,
matter. So
okay.
I wouldn't worry about that. The only thing that matters as of now, for right now,
It's
is
title and thumbnail.
title thumbnail would get you so much further. That's why when we were talking about it and you were talking about your plans for live streams, all that stuff's great. Reps, like building in and nurturing the audience that you have. But your highest leverage thing is going to be to either learn the title thumbnail game better or to hire someone that can do it at a really high level for you.
Yeah. And I've certainly thought about it for the thumbnails. I mean, just like it's like definitely an investment. Like especially
Mhm.
like a really good one, like a really good thumbnail artist makes more money in a year than I do. You know, like that is a real so kids, if you're in college right now and you're thinking about learning a skill, um,
Yeah.
get really good at it. I guess Photoshop probably is what it's or is there new stuff? I don't know. Maybe Photoshop is not the meta.
There's different ways to do it. Even honestly, like I'm not an expert anymore. I would say that I know kind of what good looks like, what bad looks like. I would say if you're looking for someone to frame your YouTube strategy, it's not me. YouTube is really not my priority right now. I'm not even focusing a ton on it in general. But um, I would say like you could invest X amount of dollars into a course to even get to like B plus level thumbnails, and
Yeah.
that would be huge for you. And it doesn't mean that your thumbnails have to take you an hour. Your thumbnails could take you a lot less time than that. But like getting the proper
It's
workflows
the core
down.
competency that
Yeah, and,
matters.
like, you could probably I mean, I could look at your thumbnails right now and tell you the do's and don'ts, but it's honestly, like, one of those things that, like, you need to just get better with time and actually know what good and bad looks like before you, like, really I wouldn't say hiring someone would be great for you right now because you don't even really know what you're looking for. You know what I mean?
No,
Those type of employees need a lot of direction. You can hire full-blown agencies for stuff like that too, but they're gonna charge you more for the
yeah,
strategy
maybe
aspect of
someday.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
What
I
so
would say
let's
it would be a good thing for you to spend some time on in the summer.
let's talk about that a little bit. Your shift away from YouTube. You got into this stuff a little bit with Brian and Pete, but like
Mhm.
from a very high level of someone like just learning about all of this stuff. The things you constantly hear are YouTube is actually the biggest search engine in the
Mhm.
world, right? It's actually bigger, especially now that Google is like awful. They like redid their algorithm. I don't know, couple months ago, years ago, whatever. Um,
It's all
so
ads.
that yeah, to sell ads, yeah.
Mhm.
And so YouTube is like the biggest search engine in the world. It's like a good search engine too. It's like very likely to serve you what you're actually looking for. It's very complex. Um, so why go away from the most functional, powerful search engine in the world?
It's the same thing we said at the beginning. I identified the avatar of person that I wanted to go after for my business. I knew kind of what I wanted to do, what I didn't want to do, but also a spot that I know I can win at. And for me, that's short form, just because I've had so much experience, even outside of my own content, with short form, that it was a place that I thought I could compete at a high level. So that's the short answer. The slightly longer answer, it's basically a spot where there's a higher ceiling in terms of your overall like net that you can cast, but also like even just like down the road, bigger audience can lead to other types of opportunities that a thousand true fans audience will not. Right. So there's different there's different aspects, even just like the 10-year plan of this, to where like if you have a high audience or a large audience, you can really attract different types of partners, different type of rev share deals, different type of equity partnerships. Because like in my world, like the large content creator with a very broad but specific in some ways even audience, that is very engaged is super valuable for someone that's just starting a product, that eventually wants to sell their product down the road. Because the biggest issue for a lot of these pieces of software or whatever it is, it's really just trying to get traffic figured out, right? There's only so much you can do with a
Right.
small Twitter audience. There's only so much you can do with ads. Like the warm traffic that I can drive to any sort of piece of software, or even just like these apps in general, these pick'em apps, anything like that, like they're all in customer acquisition mode, and it's just more valuable in some ways. So it depends on what you want to do, dude. You're either building a lifestyle business or you're building a business that just has a little bit more broad appeal. And that's the thing that I always talk about. Like, I think you want to be on one end of the spectrum. And I think you've done a really good job with that too. You and Pete obviously have done a great job with that. I think anyone in the middle is really doing themselves a disservice.
Yeah, I mean, basically, there is really no way to middle it. You start fiddling around and like researching, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna watch all these other YouTubers. I'm gonna think
Hmm.
about it, and you're like, there really is no way to serve your hyper. Because like another thing is, do you ever do this? Like you think about, it's actually disservices you a little bit to say the algorithm. Oh, I'm doing this for the algorithm. It's like no, you're doing it for the audience, and the
Yes.
algorithm just helps you find the audience. There's
100%.
really no way for me to do what I like to do and what my audience right now enjoys while also servicing the guy who plays in one office league
Hmm.
with his buddies that's $50 and he just wants his waiver wire pickups for week 6 or whatever. There's no way to do both really.
Totally. And yeah, I mean, even the opposite of that, right? Like the guy that does just kind of want to get his picks and feel smart in front of his buddies in his group chat, like he doesn't want to hear about Sims and ROI and any of that stuff, right?
No, fuck
Like,
no.
so he just wants to get his dopamine for the night as he sits down to watch Thursday night football, and he wants to figure out where he can actually get his free bonus bets because he's basically out of money and needs to figure out another way to get his bankroll up. It's like it's a completely different type of audience. Either one is right or wrong. YouTube in general, for like the thousand true fans and the more like the content that actually has more legs, is definitely better. But if you're trying to get as many views as possible for the guy that's sitting down to watch Thursday night football, I've said it before, you need view velocity at the right time. So like I want all my views on Thursday morning until kickoff for the, you know what I mean? It doesn't do me any good to have a video that gets a million views on Monday because it's not really going to convert anything anyways, right? So like I do those videos, those like way too early videos, and a lot of them get views, but they really don't convert very well. So it's like it's one of those things too, like what do you want to be spending your time on? And for me, it's like I need to get as many views as possible during X amount of time with the right type of content. And short forms just a much better way to do that than YouTube, because YouTube needs to age over time. Even YouTube shorts, like the best YouTube shorts in the world, like I talk about getting to sit in on some awesome meetings and learning a lot. There's this girl, Jenny Hoyos. She's got like, I think 20 million on YouTube. She's like kind of like the Gen Z, but like her stuff is YouTube Shorts, but it's all so specific. It's like kind of like Mr. Beast light type of stuff, not stuff that I would really ever want to do. But the whole point is like you could watch her video right now, you could watch it 3 years from now, and it's relevant, it's still funny, it's still entertaining. It's really difficult for us to do that, dude, because like we don't have that lifespan. That's why like the stuff on YouTube that does the best is the season long stuff for the most part, because there's like a
Could
month or
sit all
two.
week.
Yeah. There's a month or two. Yeah. I mean, there's months really, and like like season long lead up draft season where it's still relevant. You don't have that luxury during the season for the most part on YouTube. But the way that like Instagram Reels and the way that TikTok works, like I mean, your follower count doesn't matter for the most part, right? So like I have that's a whole nother issue, but like there's this thing going on with TikTok right now where people's accounts are getting banned. I had 2 accounts get banned in the last couple of weeks. I know that the fantasy fellas have like a $300,000 TikTok, or $300,000, 300,000 follower TikTok that got banned. So we're battling that. But like I had an account that has like 250 followers on TikTok, got a video that had 100,000 views last week or whatever. And then the week before had an Instagram account that was like 200 followers that got a million views or half a million views, something like that, going into the NFC championship. So it's like, if you're doing the right kind of stuff to the point of like the algorithm, it's really just like, how can you do the type of content that's actually good that people are going to engage with? That like the answer is always just do better content. Better content gets
Right.
more views. It's not how many followers you have, which actually a great opportunity because it used to be different than that. It would show your content to your followers first. Now it's like a small subset of your followers see your content, and then it starts getting pushed out to different people based on what the actual content is and putting it in front of people. It's actually much better for smaller creators than it's ever been.
Why is TikTok banning people? Is it like legislation related? Like, oh, if we're gonna keep this in America, we have to trim out
Mhm.
gambling stuff?
What's crazy is you would think that like TikTok would be like the least or the most lenient on certain things, but as far as like free speech goes, like it's actually one of the most like ones that's like the most cracked down upon. So they everyone has like their gambling stuff in their terms of service, all of that. Even if you're doing some sort of fantasy sports related stuff, pick 'em stuff, like there's not enough nuance in like their automation or their AI or whatever picks things up to tell the difference for the most part. So you're getting banned based on gambling for the most part, on TikTok, at least right now. So like it's pretty scary. Like I didn't even post for the Super Bowl on my main account because it got banned for like 12 hours and I didn't want to take the chance of it getting banned again. So I was posting on smaller accounts for the last couple of weeks. But yeah, that part of it's like a little bit nerve wracking because even if you're doing everything right with compliance and you have the big list from Underdog or whatever of the do's and don'ts, these like that's another reason to have an email list too, is like you're still at the mercy of like whatever TikTok is going to ban you for something. There's no customer service. Like you're never going to get that account back.
No,
So
never.
so that's pretty brutal, especially if that's where a good chunk of your revenue comes from. So I'm like more of someone that has a lot of accounts that I'm building at once versus one asset. So like losing a 50,000 TikTok follower fantasy football account like doesn't bury my business. You know what I mean? So
That is insane. I mean, it's just for I like obviously
not
for
a fun
me,
thing to
it's
wake up to. Yeah.
no, it's just crazy to think of like, oh, like 50,000. Like we are at such different areas and like of the surface area, like our surface areas are like not touching at all, which is just so
Dude, I
it's
was
just
as
very
surprised
interesting.
as you were like 100 million. Like I did over 100 million views in NFL last year, which is like completely insane, right? Like I didn't believe the numbers until I kind of looked at it. But then you think about it, it's like I posted like 300 and some videos this year across like fantasy, DFS, betting, all these other sports. Like I still do some basketball and baseball stuff, all of that, like across all of those. And that's basically across Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts for the most part for most of those, so they get tripled. It's like the amount of it's just a lot of videos, right? It's a lot of shots on
Right.
goal. And even if like those like most of those videos don't get crazy views, you mix in a couple with a couple million, but then over the course of like 6 months, like 100 million views is like very reasonable. And if you convert a very, 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 very small percentage of that to these pick'em sites, I mean, it can amount to like a good amount of money, right? So
Is it
different games.
negatively like punitive on these sites to have videos that don't do well? Like you post one day you I don't know, you're sick, you don't have your
Mhm.
fastball, whatever it might be. You just do shitty and your reel and your YouTube short and your TikTok for the day, it sucks.
Yeah.
Is it like punitive in the future algorithmically if it does bad one day?
Yeah. I mean, there's a little bit of guess and check here too. Like I'm kind of the mindset that things start to compound, so you don't want to have flops. Obviously, YouTube is like
Right.
that for sure. For like, I'm starting to think though more than like on TikTok and Instagram, it doesn't matter as much. Like you basically want to prove that your content is high quality over the long term, and you could do that with like a handful of videos, and then they're still going to give you your shot. And then if you get put in front of people, it comes down to the same thing. They want people to stay on the apps. They want to make more ad revenue. So like if the video that they're showing people are scrolling past it or not engaging, they're just not going to show it to as many people. But if you can tell good stories, hook people in, actually drive engagement, and there's a million different ways to do that in like an authentic and real way, like they're just going to show your videos to more people, right? So like I think still my edge is just from like a charisma and storytelling aspect of like trying to build cool stories about what I think are the best picks versus just trying to give you the best picks on vibes. Like there's plenty of people that'll give views that just tell you the best picks are the best picks because they're smart and blah blah blah, not because
Right.
of like cool stories on like why that could be the case. So like I'm still trying to give out the best possible picks I can, of course, but like this is a hard game. You know what I'm like? No one's out there just hitting at like crazy rates. So I'd rather lean a little bit more into the entertainment and storytelling aspect of it. And like that's a game that I can absolutely win because a lot of the things that I started with was writing, right? So all of everything I do starts from writing. So the storytelling aspect of it is really huge, and most people are just really bad at it. So I'll give you like a tactical thing that people can look into. Like I don't know if you're like a South Park guy, or I'm not really much of a South Park guy either. But one of the things that they do in their stories is called the but so method. Um, so basically, when you're telling your stories, if you start with like but so in your stories, it basically just keeps people leading along, so you can get them basically to listen to the entire story. It makes things interesting, right? So if you kind of identify a problem, but this has happened, so this is what you should do. That's kind of like how you should be structuring your scripts and those type of things too. So there's like little things like that that like not enough people care about to learn. And I'm always just trying to learn different ways that I can do things. And that's one of the things that was kind of a big unlock, was just telling better stories.
I have heard of that method.
Mhm.
Little known fact, I actually got my degree in creative writing.
There you
That was
go.
one of yeah, that was it, which is very funny. Obviously mostly we're learning about these dusty old fucking well, actually, that's not true. By the time I was in college, we it kind of gone woke, and we read a lot of like Native American writers or and things like that. But
Mhm.
I do remember one of my professors did bring up the South Park but so method, which I guess I don't do a ton of writing these days, and when I do, it's the writing is analytical. The writing
Mhm.
is about NFL prospect profiles, things. What is your research methodology like when you're doing these picks? You're in the lab. I've always been curious about this. Like, I don't know how like Salvetri and Alex Caruso and all the big guys do it, but I'm very curious because I know, Joe, I've known you for a long time. Like, you were a big player. Like, you played
Yeah.
the games at as serious, and obviously DFS is very hard now. It's very different. You talked about that a lot
Yep.
with with Brian and stuff. But what is your research methodology like?
Yeah, I can't really speak for Sal or Alex or those guys, but for me, and even back to the DFS days, I've never really relied on just like one set of projections or one set of tools. I'm more of an aggregate. Let's see what a lot of different things are telling me. So that's kind of where I start. I'm opening up a bunch of different tabs, like without getting too much into the weeds. Like I still use things like ChatGPT to help me from a research perspective all the time, and that's not me asking a question to ChatGPT. That's not be like, hey, write me the script. There's nothing to do with that. It's like, hey, here's 50,000 words. Like, tell me what some of like the key trends across these are, like stuff like that. So like that's like the most basic prompt ever. But I do a lot of stuff with like advanced ChatGPT prompts just from a research perspective on just trying to organize like everything that's coming out that I think is good, and what are some of the stories and narratives, matchups, dynamics, all of those things that I could actually lean into, and what are the things that really stand out based on all of these tools and these projections as actually good plays. So like I'll usually start with what I think the best plays are, and then I try and figure out what are the stories that I can tell around that. And a lot of that comes with just like trying to find a bunch of different matchup dynamics from a bunch of different places, and trying to in some ways start there, but then basically dumb it down to something that's still useful and still interesting without being too high level, if that makes sense. Like one of the things that I use all the time is I write everything in something called Hemingway. So they'll give you like a readability score of like fourth grade reading level, how many words, XYZ, how you could rephrase
Right.
things to be lower level. I think that's like another big unlock too. It's like we're basically taught, or at least I was, to try and jam as much value into like these long, complex sentences as possible. When realistically, you should be just using shorter sentences, less complex words, especially in your hooks. And for short form, it's just like, how can we get this to like a grade 4 or 5 and still try and provide value and still try and like give something a little bit more high level than other people are giving? So I spend a lot of time just like trying to talk, basically find the best picks that I can find, try and find a bunch of different matchups and stuff that are interesting to build stories around those best picks. And then really, how can I build that into an actual story that's low level enough to still have broad appeal?
Which is, I mean, it is so funny because I get this a lot with my YouTube people and stuff. Is like the assumption that being a short form content creator is easy, right? Like, oh, dude, anyone could do what Joe's doing. Anyone could do what these guys are. It's so easy, man. You just make some picks. You throw it into Opus Pro. and you get the text overlay, and
You
boom, and
tell
you'll just
people
be
to
rich.
turn $20 into 2,000 and you just get a million views. Yep.
Yeah, but
I love that people think that because that just makes me have a ledge for longer.
the only reason, Joe, the only reason why every person doesn't do this is they're
Because they don't
just
want
their
to.
no, their ethics, man.
That
It's
too.
just
Yeah.
it's too dude, it's way too scummy to give out underdog picks on TikTok. I mean, that is just
Totally.
but that's so beneath them,
But they're
you
so
know?
pumped to post their DraftKings screenshot when they've lost for the year, but they just posted that they've won X. You know what I mean? Like, there's plenty of
Exactly.
winners out there that I'm sure that are doing that, but there's also plenty of losers that are posting their screenshots. It's the same people virtue signaling. You know what I mean? But
Yes.
I hope people think
I'm
that. I
very
really
aware
hope
of it.
people think that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I literally get this. Actually, it's just while so Sal literally just came in my stream yesterday
Cool.
while I was streaming before the Super Bowl and gifted some memberships. And like one
Nice.
great dude, Sal, very good
He's a
dude.
good human being, man. He really is.
He is. Actually, I brought it up. He came on my show, this show, way before he was like capital S, capital V vet, because he
Yep.
was just like, dude, I'm just grinding. I'm getting in. I want people to know my name. He like reached out to me. It's like one, I love when people reach out to me to come on to the show because it saves me having to book a guest, which is great.
Yeah.
Um, so I've always and like there was the whole he posted a YouTube video of like all his revenue streams and everything.
Mhm.
And people are like, oh well, this guy's just lying. There's no
It was a
way this
it was
is
a
not
Twitter
true.
thread. Yeah.
It was a Twitter
Yeah.
thread,
I
sure.
still remember. Yeah.
And like, oh, this guy's lying. He's full of shit. There's no way this is true. I've always been on South Side here because I understand to some degree how it all works. But I have just always found that interesting that people are like, oh yeah, dude, I could do it, but I just don't want to because of X, Y, and Z.
Let's be real, man. If people actually could, they would because there's like plenty of ways to make money in sports and still like I guess, be ethical and all of those things. And a lot of them are just scared because they think they're going to be judged. Like I've talked about it with Pete before too, and it's something I probably struggled with a little bit too. Is like I want to be a part of the water cooler crew and just like hang out and be on Twitter and shit posts and all of those things. But it's really hard to do that and also do the other thing. It's still like I guess very different than like the thread bros and all of that. Like I did plenty of Twitter threads in my day. Not as focused on it now because I just don't think I have a big edge with it. But yeah, it's life is trade offs, my man. So like one thing I've really admired about Sal too over the years is he has like a real active personal life. Like him and I text back and forth like a lot. But I just won't hear from him for a couple of days. He's just busy or he's like doing stuff. He's like there's a bunch of guys that are like active in like the running community in Austin and like all this stuff. They have like real lives. Like they actually like are running their business, doing their thing, but they're not like on Twitter 24/7, like arguing about nothing. Like I kind of envy that. You know what I mean? So
I also envy that in a lot of very real, very visceral ways. It's
yeah.
very hard. And although I did just notice this. So I get, these Twitter payouts because I have the Twitter premium. And
Yeah.
I used to get like I was not making money. The purpose of my Twitter account is not to engagement farm to make money. And because recently I've realized how fucking difficult that would be because you get paid like nothing. Like it's not
It's one of the worst ones. Yeah.
if someone is engagement farming on Twitter and making a living, they must be really good at it.
It's
But I
not
normally
unused.
get
Yeah.
yeah, I normally get like I don't know 30 or $40. Like it's nothing. But
Hmm.
I did notice the last 2 months I'm just so fucking busy like trying to work, trying to like make something happen. I've gotten like I think let me pull it up. $10.35 for the last pay
There you
period
go.
because it's just like I can't just be on Twitter all day.
Yeah.
I can't just be posting, hanging out all day because I'm like trying to get shit done. And I just thought that in the back of my head. I was like, that's very interesting.
Hmm.
And an observation on my personal behavior I wouldn't have noticed.
It's not all views are created equal either, right? So like I think about that a lot. It's based on time of year, but it's also based on platform. So like some of the conversations that like Sal and I have, it's like, hey, I've just noticed that, like it takes X amount of views to get a conversion right now on Instagram versus TikTok. Like, are you seeing the same thing? Or you're promoting X pick'em site versus Y pick'em site. I can't figure out why X is converting so much better than Y. Like, is it the same for you? Like, we're trying to run experiments all year long and try and figure out macro what we can be doing better, right? So like there's a million things that I can do better. in short form. There's a million different things that Sal would probably say he could do better in short form, but we're trying to figure out like what are the macro trends at the highest level, what we're seeing versus what we're not seeing. Because if I don't see that and I'm seeing like maybe he's getting a higher conversion on this platform, like I'm probably doing something wrong. So I need to reassess what he's doing versus what I'm doing. Right. It's a big game of like, what are the best content, like even just across different niches, but like, what are the best creators doing right now that are getting the most views? Because that's what it comes down to for us. It's like views versus conversion. So some platforms are better than others, but like there's also like levers you can pull, and there's metas, there's all of these different things, right? So there was like there's like a weird part of the season this year where it was like the most ridiculous hooks ever were the ones that were working. So I mentioned this on Moles, but like you could retire your girl with these 5 picks, like something so outrageous that people are just like, oh, that's funny. And then like before you know it, they're like 10 seconds into the video and like they're going to stick around to see what you have to say versus just saying these are the 5 best picks for Thursday Night Football. Like no one gives a fuck. Like they're out of there. You got to have something that's just like going to catch their eye. To me, it's different than saying something like that that's like clearly entertaining and a joke versus being like these 5 picks are guaranteed to hit. Like you're just giving people unrealistic expectations, right? I think there's a very clear difference on those things. So,
What are your content consumption habits like?
yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
question. I actually like it's funny because I listen to a lot of long form podcasts, like tons. Like if I'm like doing dishes, driving, I'm listening to a long form podcast. Short form, it's the same probably as everyone. I probably do a little bit too much swiping at the time, but like I like stuff that has nothing to do with like sports for the most part.
Nothing to
Um,
do with sports, man.
like my short form stuff that I really like I love like comedians. I love like watching like people do like their green screen breakdowns of like whatever it is, like different types of that like short form finds its way on my feed. But like long form podcasts, I'm a big podcast person in general. I don't really listen to much sports stuff at all, if I'm being honest. So
No, I don't I listen to one sports podcast. Um and it's a soccer podcast, so not
mhm.
something I like do professionally at all. Like not something I do on my channel. I can't I gotta be tuned out, man. I can't. I guess I listen to some basketball stuff, but again, I don't have to do. I don't really do any of that. I just, dude, I like can't think about football. Like it's 3:51 Central Time right now, and like, dude, like I'm not gonna think about football again until I wake up. Hopefully, I'm not sitting thinking about football all night. But the
But
way I've
go ahead.
consume well, just the way I consume content has changed a lot. I'm much more interested in watching YouTube videos now,
Love it. Yeah.
but like in a way of like, oh, why do people love this shit so much?
True. Yeah. Like, I guess, do you go to your YouTube homepage and just be like, oh my God, like it knows me so well. Like, I go to my YouTube homepage right now and it's so much stuff that I like immediately. Like, I could spend a lot of time just like on YouTube, just like clicking into creators that I've never really been that interested in, but just want to like learn more about whatever they're talking about. Like, that, like, YouTube is incredible for like a consumption standpoint for me. TikTok is still the one I can find myself the most lost in, for sure. Instagram is probably somewhere in the middle, but I guess I have one bone to pick with you, Davis. I heard you don't like my boy Chris Williamson in the Modern Wisdom podcast.
Okay,
I want to hear why. It's like let
so
me get your Chris
obviously
Williamson take.
this is this is me trying to retain like a shred of like I'm too fucking cool for school. These guys have nothing to teach me type thing. Like obviously Chris Williamson probably if I listen to his podcast, it probably would like literally change my life. I would probably learn a lot. He probably has literally fountains of wisdom, or at least his guests would have fountains of wisdom. And the only reason I even know who he is because I'm not attuned to that world, was he is actually friends with Chris Bumstead,
Mm,
who is like the most popular bodybuilder in the world. One I'm like really into like weightlifting videos and stuff right now. And he came to visit Chris for a week to or a weekend to do a podcast, and he was on Chris's video. But I what's the right way to phrase this? Because I really like to read and I really like to read the classics and stuff. I
hmm
find digestible bits of wisdom really abhorrent. Like I tweeted, and this is not even a shot at him, but I tweeted out Jack Settleman, our friend,
Yep.
tweeted out like, I'm on the fucking subway. I'm trying to not be on TikTok. What should I do? I'm like,
hmm
dude, just download the Kindle app You can read a book all the time. You could be on the subway, you could knock out 5 pages of a book. And Connor Allen, who works for 444, does stuff. He said, "Oh, I do this, but I use this. I want to say it's called Blinkist, but it might be called something different. It's like a thing that sums up nonfiction books, and you can like get the lessons of it in like 15 minutes.
Yeah,
And for
I've used
some,
it.
I was gonna say that is very Holka fucking coded. For
I
me,
haven't used it in a long time, but I have. Yeah.
for me, no shot. Like I really hate that, and I don't hate it for everyone in the world, but I hate it for myself because I like to get. I don't want things distilled for me. I want to play with it and figure it out
Mhm.
myself from like the source material. And so for me, the Chris Williamson stuff, the Tim Ferriss stuff, like all of the motivational guru type. You know who I actually hate the most? And I don't actually hate him. I think he's a really good guy with a great message. Ryan Holiday, who
Mhm.
does the Stoic wisdom stuff,
Yep. No, I
because
know.
I've read all those books, not his books, but the OG books. I actually have a copy of Meditation sitting right there. I read it
Mhm.
all the time. And I hate that Ryan Holiday is basically like a fucking, to me, like a Silicon Valley CEO regurgitating this 3,000-year-old wisdom. And there's not even anything wrong with it. I
Mhm.
support his right to do it. I think he's a net good in society. But for me personally, I just fucking hate that shit.
That's fair. You're entitled to your own preferences and opinions, obviously. Chris Williamson's one, like, I'm just poking fun at you because I've met him in person a couple of times. He's really close with
I
Cody.
was
So
gonna say, I seem like he's a good dude for sure.
yeah, let me give you the bull case on him, and I'm not going to change your mind, but this is at least my
You might.
standpoint on
I
it.
change my mind
So,
about things all the time now.
so my argument would be that someone like Chris Williamson is actually good for young men in particular. He helps them think bigger. I'll give you that he does do like um, the self-help platitudes. He has like kind of a an algorithmic approach to his podcast where he starts with like what someone tweeted, goes into it. It's very built on where you can get clips from it as well. But I do think that he kind of can help encourage self-improvement without like the toxicity. Like he doesn't really do that. He's not really much of like a self-help grifter, really, in my opinion.
Yes.
He's really focused on like fitness, intellectual growth, like personal responsibility. He's not like really like that far down like the red pill echo chamber, in my opinion. I think he makes personal growth for men a little bit more accessible because he is kind of like a bro science, but like he's willing to poke fun at himself about it. He has a lot of interesting people on, obviously, but
Yeah, he gets
he
great guests.
he does. He's actually like just in general like a really good interviewer, I would say. He's very thoughtful about like the questions he asks. You can just learn a lot about just content just by listening to the way he frames certain things and the way he thinks. But he is really big on like accountability, self-reliance. He doesn't really make excuses, all that sort of thing. I think he's proof that like I think he's proof of like if you wanted to do the podcast game well, that you can do it and do it in a way that isn't just trying to get clicks and do all these different things. He's definitely algorithm friendly in the way that he records his podcast, but I think he promotes a really good message of like living around like learning, improving, discipline, all of those things. And I think all of those things are a net positive to society personally. I think there's plenty of
100%.
guys like him that are
None of
annoying,
my
but
none of
my
my
take is that he's
criticism
he's great. Yeah.
none of my criticism is about him.
Mhm.
And I guess so some of the times I say things like that and it comes out like I think these guys suck. So like there are guys in the Chris Williamson self-improvement, men need to be better sphere who I would argue are like net negative,
Do you like Andy
net
Frisella?
bad.
Like someone that's gonna literally yell at you and like tell you you need to be better.
So
Like I
I'm
did
I'm about to
75 hard, all of that stuff. So like I
so
love Andy Frisella.
Andy Frisell is from St. Louis. His company
I
his
know. That's why
company
I
is
asked you about
here.
him. Yeah.
Him and his brother, they're okay. They're it's not my two that I let self-help grift me and that I will continue to chuck money at them until they die. Andrew Huberman and
Yeah.
David Goggins.
Mhm.
Huberman, the probability video, bad look. The New York Intelligencer article, bad look, Andrew. Having Jordan Peterson on your podcast and Mark Zuckerberg on your podcast, not a good look. But it's not gonna sway me, man. It's not gonna. I just like him. I
As
pre-ordered
someone
his.
that loves reading books, like I know you do, I'm not shocked that you love the 5-hour Andrew Huberman deep dives for
Oh
sure.
God, dude. It's like I'm probably gonna listen to that when I'm done. I'm gonna go walk my dog when we're done. I've been at my
Yep.
desk for 7 straight hours staring into this ring light. I'm gonna put on an Andrew Huberman podcast that's 4 hours long about
Yep.
improving myself, and I'm gonna go walk my dog, and I'm not gonna listen to it on 1.5x, it's 1x. I'm gonna love it. And then actually, Goggins is the type of person that I would have hated growing up.
Yeah.
Like, this is so cheesy. This is so fun. And it's actually the thing that I like about Goggins is that he doesn't code it in good language.
Yep.
He doesn't code it in
You like Goggins probably for similar reasons that I like Andy Frisella. Like sometimes I need someone to just like yell at me and tell me I'm being
just
a
yell at me,
pussy.
dude. Just
Yeah.
tell me to get up and carry the boats. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter that I don't feel good. It doesn't
Like,
matter.
wait,
I
you
don't
can't
need to
get in a cold tub
recover.
for 3 minutes today? Like, oh, okay. Like you are
Embarrassing.
ridiculously soft. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Like literally exactly. And
Because there's been
Goggins has the
100,000 people that are willing to do that today. So if you're not willing to do that, like, how do you expect to beat them in anything? Like, this, I need someone to like
yes.
yell at me those type of things. Like that's how my mind works. I mean, it comes from like the athlete thing where like I was always the person that performed the best. Like when my coach would just come at me and I would play angry. It's like I do business angry sometimes too. It's a joke. It's like I have to like create all these people that I think are against me or that like I think I can do better XYZ because more for fuel than anything to get me through like the October and September, like I can't talk to anyone. I just have to grind type of thing. So you got to find motivation somewhere, man. It doesn't matter how you get it. Sometimes the people yelling at me is all I need just to get going.
That's the I mean, it's really the only thing that works for me. Being kind to myself has not really ever worked for
No,
me to get me to do any, and maybe it works for some people. Maybe some people need that. Maybe some people have different gifts than me. Some people have different ways to access the pathways in their brain to get them to work, but it doesn't work for me. The only thing that works for me is grinding,
yeah,
anger.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I
It's the
think
only way. So those are
if we
my
bring
guys.
it if we bring it full circle though, like the grinding in the right direction is also very important. I've found you can
100%.
grind for no reason. There's like all you have to do is open Twitch right now, and you'll see hundreds and thousands of people streaming to people with 3 viewers, but have never once considered trying to create some sort of top of funnel content to get them to their streams. Right? It's like those people are never going to make it, and they might stream for hundreds of hours and waste so much time before they realize that. And that's really frustrating. So like I love doing like these type of podcasts, have these type of conversations. Like I will actively like without asking, maybe some people don't like it, just like try and DM someone, hey, like you should do this differently. I don't want to see you waste your time. Like, and maybe I come off as like direct and maybe people think that I just think more highly of myself than I should. But I legitimately just like I just want to help people not make the same mistakes I did because there's so much room for everyone to like be making a living in sports is awesome. Like we've been doing it for a really long time, but there's such a different way to do it to where it can actually like help your family for like your entire life, help your I mean there's a million things that you can do in sports to do it well, but I don't know. There's I'm so proud of you for taking that jump, man, because I hate when it's like something happens to you. You're just like, fuck, I'm just going to take the easy way out and go work for some other company for X amount of money, get in the door, get out the door. But like, you're actually going to build something that's going to compound over time, which I think is really cool.
I hope so. I hope so. I hope that we are simply adding to the compounding wheel right now. Joe, what do you want to promote before we get out of here? Do you want people to sign up to your email list? What's the best way? Where can we send them, brother?
Um, no, I don't think we need to promote anything. If they want to find me, they can find me. I would say on Sunday mornings, in terms of like the live stream people and the people that like longer conversations, you can find me on Sunday mornings, like 8 a.m. Eastern time on my YouTube channel. That's the only live stream I'm doing these days is Sunday mornings. If I can steal a couple of your people, a couple of Pete's people to come hang out with me like early in the morning on Sunday mornings, that's a win for me. So
All right, there we go. You guys know where to find Mr. Joe Holka. We're getting out of here. Make sure that you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back with all of you guys next week.